I hadn't realized it, but I had been practicing against Young Link so often, being frustrated with it, that I had low-key learned the matchup through frustration. It's like, wait a minute, this guy isn't as hard as I remember before. I like, it was in that moment I'm just like, oh, I actually know this matchup.
Well, it's me, Samax, again, here with the clutchest of boxes, here to discuss his appearance in Metagame and reminisce a little bit about that period, maybe shed some light on some topics in the series that didn't get enough play or what have you. First off, I guess my question to you would be, what sort of your first reactions were to Metagame, your favorite parts? Things that could have been done differently, or things that should have been included that maybe weren't, especially about that time period.
Yeah, I guess like I would have considered myself more of a side character in the documentary. It was more so of a story of PPMD's rise and fall and sort of his, the way that he coped with things, with Armada and Mango being foils to PPMD in a sense. Um, of course, that period of time was sort of dominated by those players, so it makes sense. Really enjoyed the first few episodes. Really enjoyed the hype aspects of Melee. Really enjoyed how the sort of the buzz in the air whenever you go into a tournament was captured. I think that was a very powerful thing, and I really enjoy the fact that it sort of is going to act as a time capsule for a very important period of time. And everyone who watched the Smash Brothers original documentary now can sort of go to that and see how the story continued to unfold. So definitely enjoy those parts. I think the parts that sort of were less conclusive for me, or sort of less impactful for me, were the parts that tried to explore maybe even the flaws of the characters, the people. I think when the flaws of the players were highlighted, although they are important to the story, I think that it doesn't talk about Smash. It more so talks about the growth of a person, which may or may not be a personal or a private thing. So, in that case, depending on what the narrative is and how the game is supposed to be painted, it could be the effective or the ineffective choice. But I've always been sort of one to, sort of like, even in the original documentary in the Smash Bros. I mean, there was a lot of sentimental parts. There was a lot of parts where, the personal life of people, it showed them, it showed how it impacted their play. But, the in this case, documentary is called the Metagame. And I think it should always be more about the game than the actual personal lives of the people. So, but I'm not a movie maker or a filmmaker. I just figured that it would attempt to approach the same feel as the first one, but it went a different direction in that sense. However, I thought it started off really strong and ended off really strong, so that's what I think.
Most important thing you could do is end strong, for sure. But yeah, you mentioned a few topics I'd love to kind of circle back around to at a certain point. But if I could, the one part when your sort of God sphere explodes to life at Apex 2010, which is that's sort of the moment that you joined the Pantheon with your win over Armada. Do you feel like that was the moment that you truly joined those ranks, like the upper tiers, or was there another moment for you that you felt like that was your God sphere moment?
My God sphere moment, I thought, just actually began like as early as even Genesis, where I got third place. And then at Apex 2010, when I won the tournament over everyone else, that was kind of like, I was able to prove that I was among the elite. And when I beat Armada, like because I beat Armada at Apex, right? And, at that point, only a few people had done that. So I was one of the gatekeepers for him becoming the best. And then that was to be in the God sphere, but to be like the rank one and to give you the argument of being the best player in the world, that journey really started for me when I beat him at, DreamHack Winter in 2015, I believe. That's when I all started. Right. So, I would say that those are two different arcs that I had. But yeah, any Armada win is always very necessary and important for that sort of time period.
Yeah, and I do want to touch on the fact that you're basically your peak was not in this documentary at all. This was just before your sort of story took off, which is unfortunate because your story includes some of the most hype moments in Smash, and I want to touch on that too. But in episode 3, actually, you're sort of introduced at that point. And in that episode, there's a lot of sort of what the hell do we do about Jigglypuff? There's 2 montages where PP is having to deal with the way you play, and Armada's having to deal with Jigglypuff.
Yeah, I was more of a roadblock for them than the actual the actual target at those tournaments.
But
I was yeah.
You were such a consternation though for both of them that they were dedicating all this time and study to you. What do you think it was about your playstyle then that they couldn't figure out, they couldn't deal with?
I think I just broke down the game in a way that no one had really done it at that point, and I was just really good at bleeding out people. Like some people would go to the extremes and be like, "Oh, that's the guy who camped and timed out people," but if you look at the game, even for more than 5 minutes, it was a lot more than that.
Right.
It was me utilizing Jigglypuff in a form where I would sort of, whenever you made an error, I would make you capitalize and pay for it as much as I possibly could. I played in a way that you couldn't hit me while I could hit you as much as I wanted, and I also kept a lot of my strategies and my information to myself. And I made it such that if you wanted to know how to fight me, you'd have to earn it. You have to get to me in bracket first to do that, because I know that I had a pretty valuable insight on a lot of matchups a lot of people didn't have.
Yeah. And
which changed nowadays because now everyone knows Puff matchup really well, and that play kind of changed everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like I had a view of the game that no one else really had, so I want to take full advantage of it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, you definitely had you came at it from such a spacing perspective in such a unique way that it definitely really threw people, I think. And before you finally buried Armada, his young Link at EVO 2014, that matchup, his young Link choice was a real sort of devil for you, and famously led to. I want to say this is still the case. It's the longest Melee Grand Finals of all time was Apex 2012. Is that still true?
Yeah, there's no contest in Melee. It was multiple timeouts. It was a reset. It was a painful way to play Melee.
Yeah,
I think that looking back, we probably would have both approached it differently. It's just that back then, before there were sponsors, winning those cash prizes meant everything to us. So it's kind of like when you're thrust into this sort of unfamiliar territory where you're now trading sets, you just want to win as hard as possible and win for yourself, not for the fans or not for the idea of enjoyment. So it was a different feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you did eventually. What was it that got you to the point where you're able to realize, how you could counter his counter? Because his counter against you was amazing, was super hype, and then that it was almost as hype for you to figure out. There was one combo, I think it was the one it was on Pokemon
Mountain
Stadium.
combo.
Yeah, the mountain combo.
Yeah, that just came out of thin air. I didn't even practice that. It happened in the moment. I just got my confidence back. The whole summer I was working in Arizona before that point, and I was just I had a buddy there who played Smash who had a pocket young Link who I was working against a lot. Every once in a month I go to Smash Fest to play against Axe and his young Link, and I had some ideas. I was still struggling in the matchup, but then I had a Fox and Falco that I wanted to pull out that I thought would have worked, and it worked once at CEO 2014, which was kind of random. But when it didn't work at Evo, I just said I always have a philosophy where it's well, if you're cheesy or your counter pick doesn't work, just stick to your guns. Your guns are always your most important thing. And I just played with more confidence. I just played with more of the idea of the fact that I hadn't realized it, but I had been practicing against Young Link so often, being frustrated with it, that I had low key learned the matchup through frustration. It's wait a minute, this guy isn't as hard as I remember before. I it was in that moment I'm just oh, I actually know this matchup, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. So I was, playing it more intelligently. And when I was able to get that up air on Yoshi's and I beat him, I'm oh, this demon's over. I figured it out. It's just Young Link. It's just another character that has its own weaknesses. And Puff, being a really good character, can exploit them. You just gotta be patient and smart.
That's really cool. I mean, it does make sense that you put in that amount of time against someone over the years. Eventually, you're going to start figuring things out just almost subconsciously. It was amazing to see you overcome it. So that was really, really hype. You did.
It was so long ago.
It does feel like ages ago.
like a whole different lifetime.
Truly, truly. You do mention that metagame. You weren't as keen on the parts where it went into personal sides of stuff versus gameplay stuff. It's kind of hard to tell that story though of the five gods without describing like how Mango interacted with all you guys, and you in particular had a relationship with Mango that was profiled in both documentaries essentially.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you feel like that relationship was accurately portrayed in in Metagame or the original one, and has that relationship changed at all? Like how do you think looking at how that was portrayed?
All I know is like between 2013, like 2016, whenever it was, I don't even know. Between those years, like yeah, we fucking hated each other. I mean, I couldn't stand him, he couldn't stand me. Like we were like the most opposite personalities possible, in every way imaginable.
Yeah.
But life happened. Life went through. We both went through our fair share of troubles. We both had to grow up. He became a father. I, started working, started taking care of stuff over here. We both like got hit with real life, and I think we also both got sponsored. The financial situations became different for us to the point where it wasn't like the sort of like grassroots like runky dunk win these cash prizes or else you're like gonna starve sort of thing. Like the situations became a lot more different for us, and streaming happened. And once it all became a thing and we became more mature about it, I think we were to like look back and just see like, yeah, we were different people, but that doesn't mean like necessarily we do the same mistakes or we'd say the same things to each other. It was just like a period of time where our egos sort of got in the way. And don't get me wrong, he still has a big fucking ego. I still have a big fucking ego, but I think we've tamed him to this sort of point, kind of like in the sort of Jim and Dwight dynamic, where yeah, they're hella different people, and they're always gonna have spats, but like
right,
they're they're coworkers, and that's how it is. They're coworkers, and every once in a while they share a laugh or whatever. I don't know. It's just yeah, it's gotten so much bigger than all that. So much bigger than all the petty rivalries and feuds. Like it's expanded in ways none of us really could have, imagined. So I think it's definitely a thing in the past, and thing we can look back on and even laugh about now.
Yeah, that's actually that's a good point, and something that you I think you put it really well when you said this is almost a time capsule looking back on these things, because you guys were young, you guys were teenagers, and so there was no my perspective is when you look on that, it's definitely through the lens of like, man, remember when we cared so much about these things, or remember when like we had these different perspectives on stuff, and that whenever you're looking back on those years, it has to be through a lens of forgiveness and understanding of yourself and others, that it was like a learning time. You've learned so much through that and through those mistakes. So
yeah. But there was a lot of parts that myself personally, when I looked through it and I understood it, stuff, even stuff about PPMD that I didn't really know the full story or the full side of. But for instance, like the issue with relationships and how it affects your play and all that. That's 100 trillion% like the realest like thing. It is a completely real thing. Like your playstyle goes to the absolute shit if that part of your life isn't figured out. And so it's just one of those. There's one of the things that I, as a pro player, could relate to, but also, when it comes to the average viewer on the documentary, like it's something that maybe really like, kind of confused over. Oh, I didn't know this, or is it really adding to the story? But I don't know. It just depends on how detailed and how personally you want to go with it, sort of thing. But,
yeah.
Yeah.
You actually gave me, this is something that wasn't in the documentary, and it relates to a really bad loss that you had at the Big House 4, which is a tournament that gets a lot of play in Metagame, sort of this critical tournament. When you lost, it was the first time that a god hadn't placed in the top 8, I believe, like since the god era.
That's to this day, if you don't count online tournaments, it's the only time I haven't placed top 8 since
right.
I think 09.
Yeah, and so that was a really devastating loss for you. And I remember I don't know if you remember this, but you came, we both sat down next to each other at the hotel bar. And I
Yeah.
remember you said to me, maybe I'm not a god anymore. And that really hit me. It's one of the reasons that, Metagame, I think, has a darker tone, I think, is because it was really informed by the fact that, you felt like you might be looking at changing careers into chemical engineering. Mango is making noises about moving to streaming. It just felt like, this era was coming to a close and it was sort of ending. Um, do you, did you feel like, feel this was like the end of the road for you, or like looking back on it, is it sort of, obviously a lot's happened since then, but like, how did you feel at that time, like looking back on it now?
Looking back at it now, I can doubly confirm I'm not a god, but neither of those four are either.
Right.
We were put on these pedestals that were so high and mighty and made to believe that we were invincible. It's like, oh, if we can conquer melee, maybe we can conquer anything else in life. But I think we quickly learned that that wasn't the case at all.
Yeah.
I think that the mental impact that our position in the Smash scene had in regards to everything else in our life is something that I think needs to be, it's a whole nother thing to explore. It would require probably a whole nother documentary in that case. They're probably much more sad, much less interesting. But what we were the best players of video game in the world. But when people make that video game their life, they make those players their idols. They make those players their inspiration and figures. Because I like sports too, and I watch other athletes play. But there's a certain point where you come to realize no matter how good or how damn talented someone is at something, they are human at the end of the day. They make mistakes like you at the end of the day. They have inherent flaws, and they have things that they're proud of and things that they wish they could have done different, and things that they look back and think like, darn, if only I had pressed this button this time, or if only I had flicked my stick this way this time. That's all a series of coin flips that you have to live with or let yourself toil under. And that's what Smash teaches you. And Melee is the hardest teacher of that lesson. It's the punish in Melee is very parallel to the punish in life. So, there's always recovery, there's always options out, there's always second chances, there's always ways to improve. And yeah, I think Melee was just the mirror for us in that whole decade. So yeah, we're not gods, but it was sure fun being called one for a while.
That's really well put, man. I really appreciated the way you worded that, and that was one of my hopeful goals. Like with that final montage at the end, sort of showing you in class, and Mango with his kid, and that those moments where it was like, and Prague, talking about like the pantheon's really over when we stop seeing them as gods, when we start seeing them as human, which I think is the real lesson to take away from that is it's yes, the title of god is probably too much to put on any one person.
Yeah, the five gods of Melee and the God Slayer, and that's what it was, though, right?
Yeah,
we can't say that it wasn't. Those were if one of us six is at a tournament, one of us six is winning that tournament.
yeah.
It's just apart from J-Man at Don't Go Down There, Jeff, which was the most bizarre. That's the one trivia tidbit. Me and Mango attended, neither of us won.
Really? Oh shit! I never knew that.
Yeah, it's one of the most bizarre facts of Melee of all time. Mango got fourth, and I think I got seventh or fifth. But I beat Mango that tournament, and then I lost to Fly Amanita, the Ices, and then I lost to Lucky. It was so random. And then J-Man won the whole thing.
Dude, that is so wild.
Weird. Yeah. Or I got fourth, Mango got ninth. I don't know what happened, something like
that. Well, I think you definitely phrased it well. It's that era really was defined as the God and the God Slayer era, and it was the climax, sort of, in my mind at least, was definitely Apex 2015. Do you feel like, having lived in that tournament firsthand, how would you kind of compare that to other tournaments as far as like storylines and that people were invested in? I feel like that was like the last almost golden age tournament where there were these big storylines, and after that it sort of became I don't know, something changed. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. What do you think?
I think yeah, Apex 2015. It was the last marriage of the era of the new gods and the old guard putting up one last fight, and the top five placers were the five gods, right? I
Right.
mean, I'm pretty sure it was very telling. It was a very accurate depiction of what the current scene was, but also at that tournament, you had the Salty Suite, which was just a legendary event, just a circus of content, and there was I lost at PPU. I got upset by a mark there for the first time, so I had a pretty bad showing. Still ended up getting fifth place, and then I lost to Armada's Fox for the first time, which was I'm pretty sure the first time, which was the sign of things to come for the next 3 years, right?
Right. Right.
It set off the schedule and the climate for the new era. It was just odd that PPMD his win of that tournament. I mean, it really was a magical thing. Anyone who makes a documentary about it, and especially what you did correctly there, and captured all the things and moments in his life leading up to that moment, the things he was coping with for him to come back and then to win the event. It was absolutely just something unbelievable. And then to beat Armada, who was still gunning for his title, best player in the world. Yeah, it was an experience. I think that it was necessary for everyone to live through. And I think the final placings were PPMD, Armada left and third, Mango fourth.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Me fifth, and me to King got some of that placing.
Yeah. I think he might have gotten ninth. If I remember correctly, he wasn't in the top eight. Yeah.
I know that your documentary ended there at Apex pretty much, but to me, there's a beauty of Melee from 2016 to 2020 that was unmatched in any other years. I don't say it just because of the success I had, but the events that were pulled, the evos that happened, the general just climate of the scene. There was so many like insane things that happened like since Apex. But I got my own documentary, so by this guy Amp Lemon, so I will never complain about it like ever again.
That's a great documentary too.
I'm really happy that someone captured that story for me because he did the absolute best job of doing it. So at the end of the day, there's just no person can do that story perfectly. But you did your absolute best, and the effort is entirely obvious, given how many scenes you have to film, how many times you have to travel to tournaments, how many times you have to re-edit things. Whatever you end up doing with documentary, you have a gold mine of footage in your hands that can be told in many, many ways. So I was happy to be a part of it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely was a long slog. I'll tell you that, man. The sort of era after Apex 2015, your sort of dawning. How is it going back and looking at? Because you did, you would eventually become, like one of the, if not the winningest, then vying for winningest player of all time. Looking back on sort of how you were talking about, Melee and stuff and where you were going, how does that look now, like kind of looking back at that time? Like, could you have any sense for how successful you would become?
Um, no one ever really knew what would happen with it, or what it would entail. But I do know that it was only a matter of time, especially after I got crunched through my coach. It was only a matter of time with my obsession of Melee that I was just gonna keep like bashing my head against the wall until I finally beat Armada, and then eventually I did. And then the biggest thing I did was the 2017 end run, right? 2017, I was like living through a really, really bad time in my life, and I just told Liquid to send me to as many tournaments as possible. And then I won like 9 or 10 nationals like in a row, including like Big House, Smash Summit, GTX, like a bunch of big events just in a row. Just won all of them and said, "All right, cool. Like I've proven that I could do it." And I took 2017 for myself, and I took 2018 for myself. And 2019, Armada retired, but I still took that year for myself too. And 2020, I was going to try to do the same thing. Lost to Zane at Genesis, but one Summit, one CEO Dreamland. I had no intentions of stopping, but the world decided to stop.
Yeah.
But I guess it wasn't all a bad thing because I got streaming now, so I was just
True.
like, well, I guess that works out. But I still love the game, and I still hope that when things resume to normality, if they ever do, if we can ever even call things normal ever again. It would be nice to have that feeling again, but you have to work for it because I worked my ass off for it. I worked my ass off for it for like 13 years, and like this year, like I'm reaping the benefits of working my ass off for it.
Absolutely.
In a sense, like I built myself as this brand, as this figure in the scene, and having it, it's just I don't know, just the way it went.
I have to ask you, how was it? Evo 2016 might be the most clutch performance ever in any grand finals. Where the hell did you get the energy for that insane slog? That was a ridiculous grand finals.
I lost to Plep, was completely demoralized. Crunch slapped me in the face. Coffee, go down there, S2J's ass, and I 2-0'd S2J. I 2-1'd Mango. Once I hit that rest, what's it? Then I played Plup and I beat him 3-1, got the rematch. And then at that point, I was ranked 2 in the world, so I know that the only person I had to beat left was Armada. And if I lost, my rank was safe. I played to my standard. So at that point, I just let myself have fun and play your heart out. And then I won the first game 5 set when the reset happened. I don't know. It was just the stars were aligned. Like I can sort of die and know that one day on Earth, like my thumbprint was on the ceiling. Like I did the impossible, and I'll always remember that, and it'll always be the thing. I became the world champion at something that I loved, and it was just a miracle. It was a miracle. That's all I can say. If I went back in time and tried to redo it again, I'd miss it like 100 times in a row. It was a miracle.
Yeah. It was everywhere too. Like ESPN had an article about it. It was just like people were just like blown away by that whole thing. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, I think it won the esports play of the year or whatever it was. I think.
Yeah, that's right.
ESPN. So we take those.
Well, one of my last questions for you. I have one more sort of thing, and then get your opinion on sort of the future of Melee. But obviously, there's a lot of great that's come, since Apex, even before then, when we were in the sort of platinum era right after the first doc came out, and everything started building up again. Do you ever think about the earlier days though, like when you were just coming up? Do you ever get wistful for that time about that? Like I asked Mewtwo King this, and he was like sort of thinking about how now everything's sort of done, and before then he was just going on his adventure. The journey had just begun, and there was all this potential out there. Do you kind of see it the same way, or do you have a different perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, I look forward to tournaments all the time, to traveling. It was an adventure every single time. It was our chance to live life and experience it in the ways that we knew how. I don't think I wouldn't say the adventure is done. It's just that, God, when the pandemic hit, it really gave everyone perspective to look back and see, Christ, we had something really special there, didn't we? We had something really going on for us there. And no matter what, we're going to do our best to go back to it. But I don't know if things are always going to feel the same as they were, but it's our job to make it an adventure again, right? The Smash World Tour is happening again. People are still ruminating and trying to figure out the best time to host a tournament again. It's clear people would want to be in that same area, that same seance. We're just trying to figure out the best way to do it. So
yeah. Oh, good. And I guess to that point, what do you kind of have in mind for the? I mean, obviously you mentioned it already, but like the future of Melee, and sort of where you'd love to see it kind of come back. Obviously, it can't come back to the same exact thing, but maybe it'll be better.
Yeah, it's simultaneously Slippy made this game simultaneously way more popular and easier to pick up, but also simultaneously made etching and breaking into like the top that much harder, because now so many people are at a higher skill level. It's just a matter of pushing forward and like understanding what does and doesn't work anymore. I still think the feel of a CRT is different from Slippy Melee and what it is. And I still think that in person there's just some energy, some sort of confidence in the game, and confidence in your inputs, and confidence in seeing your controller on an analog input display, it's always gonna be different between the digital. But for the meanwhile, I'm trying to keep Slippy here every once in a while. I'm entering a tournament this weekend. To me, it's just like, hey, if this was my year where I was finally gonna start playing bad or finally gonna not play well, hey, at least it was online. I still have the bragging rights that I'm still currently the best CRT player in the world
There you go, dude.
until someone takes it from me, right? So I'm still holding on to that. And then as soon as they come back, I'm gonna go so try hard because I of course want to keep my rank one. That was like my thing for so long. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
Dude, I'm excited, man. I'm as soon as we come into that first tournament again, after we finally in person, it's gonna be like coming home. I think for a lot of people. So I'm excited. Did you have any more thoughts, I guess, on metagame, on your future, on Smash in general, anything like that?
No, I think that pretty much captured it pretty well. And I think that all things considered, that's what I wanted to do and that's what I wanted to say. And yeah, I think that's a good way for me to describe it.
Awesome, dude. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy as hell with your 10 jillion followers and subs and stuff. So appreciate it, and good luck this weekend, man.
All right, thanks. I appreciate it, homie.
Cheers, man.
Peace. Cheers.